I realized as I got sober that I was trying to fill the void where God was supposed to be, because I had heard about God. I had been to church enough times, several times maybe. My mom had spoken once or twice about Jesus, and she had like a crucifix, and she had an understanding, and she had a Bible, but it was never really shared with me. Drugs were shared with me consistently throughout my life. So if I had that much influence with God in my life as I had with drugs, it would have been a completely different outcome. Originally, I'm from New Hampshire. I was raised in a really, really small town called Washington, New Hampshire. There's literally more bear in that town than there are human beings. My mom was sick from a really young age. I remember her telling me that she had COPD or emphysema when I was 6, but it was actually 2 weeks before my 16th birthday. She'd been hospitalized at a facility for about 2 years, and there was a mistake, a medical mistake, and it caused her not to be able to get enough oxygen, and she passed away suddenly. Nobody really knew that it was going to happen. I dabbled in drinking and smoking marijuana and, pretty much anything, doing Ritalin and like ADHD medication with friends. But after she passed away, I kind of just went completely off the rails for a while. I started doing heavy drugs, and then just after I graduated high school, my brother, whom I was staying with, lost his house, and there really was no place for me. So I went to live with another brother who was selling drugs at the time. And then I met Nathan, my children's father, and for a while did pretty good. When I got pregnant with my son, I stopped everything. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I stopped drinking. I was going to be the perfect mom. I read all the books. I was taking all the vitamins. I was not eating the things I wasn't supposed to. And I did really well, and delivered a perfectly healthy, amazing child. But after I stopped nursing him, I kind of started to drink again, and I started to smoke pot, and I started smoking cigarettes, and over the course of 3 years, from going completely sober till he was about 4, I went downhill. And I had a friend come over and offer me Percocet. And I was like, "Oh no, I don't really like pain pills." And he's like, "Oh, just do a little bit of it. It's not a big deal." That was the beginning of the end. Honest to God, I can't describe it any other way. I had to have it in order to get out of bed. I literally was physically ill. So I just had to make sure that I just kept doing them in order to continue to function. And within a year of that point, we lost our home. Both Nathan and I were both in drugs. It wasn't just me or just him. We lost our home. By the time he was 6, I found out I was pregnant again with my daughter, and we were homeless, and we had no transportation, and we had no money, and it was out of control. And I eventually ended up at rock bottom, living in my friend's. Shortly after Crystal was born, I was living in my friend's barn, and it was winter, and the neighbors were killing chickens, and I woke up and I was like, what is going on? When did this happen? And I decided I was going to get clean, and my boyfriend wasn't terribly supportive of that idea. He was angry, but I was able to get clean for about 8 months. And then him and I started fighting, and he brought pills home, and I relapsed. And it was like overnight, I was right back where I was. We weren't able to pay our rent anymore. We had gotten a place in that time, in that 8 months. And there wasn't enough food. The kids were eating and we weren't eating, and there was no heat. My ex had literally taken the pipes out of the downstairs bathroom and sold the copper so that he could get money to buy drugs. And my brother Chris, who lived in Howard City, offered me to come stay with him. And that was 8 years ago, and I never looked back. I had heard about Jesus several times because my brother's best friend is a Christian and has been He was raised in a Christian family. He would just, drop these seeds here and there, but he loved me unconditionally and he never judged me. And he knew that I took advantage of his kindness. He'd given me money. I'd bought drugs with it. And he knew that and he still loved me. So I knew Jesus' behavior and I knew a little about who he was. I had been clean from drugs for a year, but because I was off of drugs, I was drinking every day. And I had the worst panic attack I've ever had in my life. I had had panic attacks before. I knew what they felt like. Even if you have one, you know what they feel like. You still think you're dying. So I was pacing through my house and I was over and over just trying to tell myself, you're not dying, you're fine. I'd go outside for a while. It was the middle of winter. It was too cold out there. So I'd pace back in the house and I'd walk back up to Chris. I'm like, Chris, I need to do something. And he's just, you'll be fine. Just take a Xanax. Like, I've done it a million times. I'm like, no, I can't. And this went on for 6 hours. I've never had a panic attack last that long. And in desperation, I sat down and I knelt down on the ground and I just said, I've heard that you're out there. I don't know how any of this works, but I can't live like this anymore. Please take it away. And that was it. I felt absolute divine intervention from my head. This is 6 years later. From my head to my feet, I was filled with so much calm, like warmth and relaxation and love and cool. And I knew without a doubt that what I had just asked for was given to me. And I didn't know why it was. And I didn't know exactly who had done it. But there was somebody with me that said, okay, I'll take this from you. And I remember being able to stand up and look around and reorient myself with where I was and what was going on and lay down and go to sleep. And when I woke up, it was still there. There was this relief that just never went away. And I knew that what had just happened was God. I decided I was never going to drink anymore. I knew the gift that had just been given to me, and I knew what caused me to be where I was, and I didn't want to go back there. So I was just going to do what I could to do the right thing, the next right thing, over and over and over. I eventually found a church right down the road from where I was living and started attending it regularly. I got baptized about a year after attending that church, and I've just been led and thirsty and completely moved by anything that has to do with Jesus, the Holy Spirit, God, any information I can get, any guidance that I can get as to how to communicate and how to be led from that moment on.
That's awesome.
I am Sandi Cooper, and I am loved by God.